Cool. It is 6:10, guys. I'm sure I'm still going to be admitting people as we progress through the presentation, but thank you all so much for joining. It's really much appreciated. Again, as I mentioned, I can see some familiar faces. We love doing these insight events and just giving you guys a lot of information and perspective on all the various industries out there. So we're really grateful for you guys turning up, and it seems like this is going to be a record-breaking session this evening. I also think as well, like people come in at 6 o'clock to learn about careers and stuff. It just shows that you guys are really serious about getting into the industry or navigating the industry. And we're very, very grateful for that. Today's session is going to be run by Kenny, who's a compliance officer at a fintech firm, and she's going to be delving into essentially making a lot of money in corporate, but through her various ways of how she's done it, predominantly through contracting. And again, this is something that I'm quite interested in as well because I never knew that this avenue was so available to people just kind of early on in their careers. And Kenny, I guess is it fair to say that you're still in the early parts of your careers and you've kind of managed to navigate going into contracting, sort of?
Most definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect, perfect. Yeah. So with that being said, Kenny's going to be breaking down how she's kind of done it, a bit of insight into contracting, and then as always, guys, be sure to kind of drop your questions in the chat. And as Kenny's progressing through the presentation, I'll be sure to kind of like insert them where I see fit. Also, as always, this session is going to be recorded and available on our website. I appreciate that most of you may not be members of our website, but if you sign up to our website, you can get access to the recording after to go through as well. The presentation will also be available on our website, so be sure to sign up to our website to get access to that. And then lastly, as always, I'm always sharing a feedback form after. We're always trying to make these sessions better. We're always trying to bring more guests that you guys may want to see. And now there's a new section in there where you can kind of drop the names of people that you want to see. And I will try my best to locate them, flag them down, and bother them as I've bothered Kenny to come and spend her evening talking to you guys. But with that being said, I'll hand it over to Kenny to kind of go through the presentation. And Kenny, just let me know when you want me to switch slides and stuff like that. And yeah, we can get into it.
Yeah, we might as well get started. Might as well. Yeah, feel free to go to the next slide at this point.
Perfect.
Oh, I think there was a slide before this, with the one with like the intro, who am I, that kind of stuff. Yes, we seem to be missing a few bits on there. I'm not sure what's happened. But...
no, the technical difficulties is really serious. Sorry about this, guys.
Yeah, that was a bit.
Sure why.
Yeah.
No, I can see it. For some reason, it's just not. There we go.
There we go. Yeah. Yeah, we got there in the end. But yeah, so hi guys. As Stephen has said, my name is Kenny, and I've been in the sort of corporate world for about 5 years now, roughly. And I'm a compliance professional, and I'm currently working at a fintech, basically the largest fintech in the world. But I'm not explicitly saying their name because I actually had a look at their social media policy and things the other day, and it says that don't associate yourself basically with us in public. So I was like, okay, cool. So I'll probably leave that one out,
yeah.
Just purely for that purpose. But yeah, so I'm also a content creator. I create content on TikTok predominantly, but I'm also on Instagram, as you can see on there. So yeah, that's my TikTok, and I essentially talk about my career journey, and I provide career tips, and I also share just like daily life and stuff like that. And then on Instagram, I do some of that stuff as well, but not as much as on TikTok. So yeah, so that's me. And then I'm also an aspiring property investor, which is, I think, the whole point for me of like really going for it when it comes to corporate, because I'm a big believer in actually using your corporate job to fund what you want to do outside of your life, because at the end of the day, I believe that we're not here to just work and work and work. I think there has to be some sort of purpose behind it. So that's mine. I've got one property at the moment. I'm looking for a second one, and I plan to just keep going. And I've been in the process. I've been able to do that through purely my 9 to 5, like purely my 9 to 5. And I think that's something that is accessible to everyone. I talk to people in my personal life about stuff like this, and I'm really excited to be here and just talking to you guys about this. I'm not here presenting myself as this like professional that knows it all. I'm just a girl that started out in corporate and it's found opportunities, jumped at opportunities, and I'm here to share it, essentially. So yeah, that's who I am
Nice, nice.
in a nutshell. So in terms of questions, Stephen, should I answer questions as we go? Because I can see some popping up, or should we
No,
wait?
no, don't worry. I got you. I'll cover all the questions. You just truck on with the presentation and let me know when you want me to switch the slides.
Okay, lovely. Cool. Yeah, you can I think I've introduced myself, so we can go ahead and do the next slide. Yeah. So in terms of the agenda for today, I've kept it quite simple. You know, we're going to talk about different ways to make six figures in corporate. I'm going to talk about my personal journey to making six figures in corporate. And also I'm going to talk about how you guys can make six figures in corporate, which will tie in nicely with how I've made six figures in corporate. And then I've got a free resource for you guys at the end as well that would be helpful in that journey. So yeah, stick around for that at the end. And then obviously we're going to have a Q&A towards the end. So yeah, that's essentially what we're going to go through today. Next slide, please.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah. So the slides for me are more of like talking points. I'm going to be doing most of the talking, and I'm just going to use this to kind of prompt me in terms of what to say. So in terms of the different ways to make six figures and a lot of money in corporate, the traditional way that we all know of is essentially getting a job in corporate, starting out from your typical average graduate salary. I'm not sure what that sits at the moment, but it's in your 20s, I think, or maybe a bit lower. I'm not too sure.
I think now the new age graduate salaries are like 30s and upwards is what the new age salary looks like. I remember when I came out of uni, I remember I got 25K and I thought I was rich. So yeah, but yeah, 30s is kind of the new norm now.
That was me on 28K. I thought I was balling, but no. Yeah, so
Literally.
essentially start out on your normal entry level salary, and then essentially just work your way up, and then become, this is what I thought anyway, going into corporate, and then you work your way up to more senior roles, and then typically those will pay you more money, and yeah, you just keep going. And some people play the career game and you work your way up to become a CEO, and just essentially work your way up the ladder in order to make like some serious money in corporate. So that is still a feasible route, and that isn't something that I frown against. Like, I'm not here to push an agenda of like, oh, look, do what I did. Like, I like to have an objective view and present the different options, and then talk about my story, what I've chosen to do, and why I've chosen to go down the contracting route, right? And then you could also choose high-paying industries, because in all honesty, like, industries do matter. Like, the industry that you choose to go in to does matter. Like, some industries there is a glass ceiling in terms of what you can get money-wise in certain industries. And we all know about, the tech is the craze at the moment. And, you can typically make more faster in certain industries such as tech. So yeah, we all know the sort of the traditional industries where you can make more money. So actually choosing your industry wisely can really help you in that journey to, if six figures is your aim, then choosing the right industry plays a part in that, right? And then another way is actually just gaining and leveraging high value skills. So gaining certain skills, and essentially the way I view the work market is like, it's a marketplace, and it functions of like supply and demand. So the more demand there is for a certain skill and the less supply there is for it, the more employers are going to pay for that skill. Typically, this isn't the case for every single skill, but that's generally the trend that we see when it comes to the corporate world. So if you can identify those kind of skills that are in high demand, but not a lot of people can do that, maybe there's a barrier to entry, or for some reason, not everyone could do it, but there's a lot of demand for it, you'll typically get paid more for those skills, right?
Yeah.
And then there is also, yeah, Stephen, do you agree? You look like you were kind of pondering on
Yeah,
what
no,
I said.
I'm literally just agreeing with you. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. You don't have to agree. But yeah, so there's also the contractor side of things, which is what I've chosen to do. So it's essentially, it's your normal corporate job. I'm in compliance. I've worked in a number of industries. I started out in banking, and then I actually worked at a startup, funny enough. I don't know if anyone follows me on TikTok, but I speak about all of these things on my TikTok page a lot. So I've worked in banking, I worked in a startup company, like a techie kind of startup, and then I went on to work at a big four. I can mention this one. I worked at KPMG because I've left essentially. So yeah, I worked at KPMG as a contractor as well. And then now I'm in Fintech, right? And I got in as a contractor. So when it comes to, you know, contracting, you can do this in a number of industries, right? So it's not just compliance, like a lot of industries, you can go into contracting. And essentially what it is you're hired, but as a kind of like a freelancer. So instead of getting paid like a salary, for example, most people are on a normal salary, which the average in the UK, I think, is about 30, between 30 and 40, thereabouts. And yeah, that's your fixed salary for the year, and that's what you get. But as a contractor, you go into the company, they hire you, and you get paid a day rate typically. So that would, obviously that ranges so much. But I've seen some numbers as low as maybe £200 a day, maybe a little bit less, £200 a day. And then I've seen crazy numbers like £2,000 a day, like per day, right? So, but obviously that's on the higher top senior
Higher end,
end, right? But it can range. But most people sit somewhere like closer to the 200, maybe around 500, per day, right? And what that means is that actually you can see your money, that your income grow quite a lot because you're getting paid on a daily basis, right? So in terms of why companies hire contractors as opposed to like your typical employee, it's because essentially contractors are kind of temporary staff. And when you want to hire temporary staff in any industry, typically you have to pay a premium for them. So you have to pay them a little bit more because most contracts range. So the length of contracts usually lasts from like 3 months to 6 months. Sometimes it's 12 months. 6 months is your typical. 3-month contracts are quite rare. I don't really see those. But yeah, so it's usually like 6-month contracts, and some people have longer contracts, but it's usually around 6 months, right? So yeah, you're on the project for 6 months, or you join the business for 6 months and you get paid a premium compared to everyone else around you, because you're needed permanently, well, temporary, sorry. But in some instances, your contract can get extended. So say you come in on a 6-month contract, sometimes it will get extended to a 12-month contract, and you can get extended. And sometimes after the 6 months, if they don't need you anymore, you're off. Usually it's like a 1 month and 1 week's notice period. So contractors don't typically get a long notice period. So yeah, that's basically what it is to be like, that's contracting. That's the world of contracting in a nutshell. So those are the sort of different ways you can make 6 figures in corporate. So Stephen, yeah.
If we can just delve into some of these parts, right? So you mentioned choosing high paying industries, and I guess like coming out of university, one of the difficulties at the moment is that university doesn't really tell you anything about how to actually navigate like the working world, right? So they didn't really give you any insight into, okay, these are the high paying industries, these are the industries that you can't earn a lot and stuff like that. And I guess like the difficulty as well is that when you studied a certain thing, your course would kind of try to push you down the path of what you studied. So how did you kind of like navigate understanding, okay, cool, these are the high paying industries, what do I want to pick, where do I want to go down? And I guess the second question as well is then also, how do you identify like, you know, what is a high value skill and how do you upskill yourself in that respect? Because again, obviously I appreciate that you've kind of been on this journey to figure out yourself, but again, it's like quite amazing to be self-aware and understanding, okay, cool, locate high paying industry, then find high value skills and go into contracting. There's so much to unpack there. So if you can kind of talk through that, please.
Yeah. So in terms of identifying high-paying industries, I just did a lot of research. Like Google is your friend, guys. Don't sleep on the power of Google. And actually, something that I did find myself doing a lot was just going looking for jobs, like searching for jobs and looking at how much they're paying on job boards. So I'll go on Indeed, look at how much they're paying for, you know, certain roles. And they, from doing that, I was able to identify a trend that, okay, this industry is going to be quite lucrative. Like I personally, like when it comes to exchanging my time, I'm very big on it being worth it. Like I don't want to just exchange my time and then I'm just getting crumbs. And that's fine as well though sometimes. And I'll explain that later. Like it's okay to start on a lower paying job. If you're on a salary right now that you deem to be low, that's okay. Like I'm not here to be like, oh, you need to be earning 100K straight out of uni. No, like it's okay if you're not, because sometimes you can be strategic, but we'll talk about that later, right? But yeah, so I just did my research, like do your research, talk to people. And that's why I think salary transparency is also really important, which is why on my TikTok, on my social media, like I talk openly about how much I was earning when I started, how much I went on to after that, and the fact that I'm on 6 figures now, because it gives people an insight into, oh, this is what you can earn. So having those open conversations as well with people And even if you can't give people like exactly how much if you can't tell people exactly how much you're earning, you can give people an indication, you can give people a range, right?
Yeah,
So
like
yeah,
ranges. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
give people a range so they can get an idea, right? So I did my research. That's how I identified it. And in terms of me getting into an industry that I saw, that I kind of I looked into the industry. I thought, oh, I could actually do this. And I like how much they pay in that industry. I did have a science degree actually when I entered the world of corporate. And at first, I didn't think I could go into like the world of finance and banking and all these things with a science degree, but you can. So your degree doesn't have to hold you back in terms of what you can go into. Like you can have a degree that's different from what you want to go into, but it's all about how you sell yourself. It's so important how what's your story on your CV, how are your interviewing skills, what transferable skills did you gain from your university degree or whatever part-time jobs or whatever gigs you've had, how can you transfer that so that the job that you want can deem you as a valuable asset, as somebody that, okay, yes, they don't come from the exact background that, of what we're doing right now, but we can work with them, right? So the way you present your CV is really, really important.
Got
So
you.
does that answer all your questions, Stephen? I think you had a couple more.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think ultimately do some research before you go into a certain industry and then also assess like the job descriptions to see what skills you can effectively learn, right? So when you've done your research to identify, okay, cool, this is the industry that pays the most money and this is what I want to go into, analyze the skills for those industries and then figure out how to learn it. And I'm sure we can kind of talk through that, how you kind of upskill yourself as we go through the presentation as well. But again,
Yeah,
conscious of time, I'll move on to the next slide for you where you can kind of talk through your journey
yeah.
through making six figures in corporate.
Yeah, because I think I saw someone ask a question about my own personal journey. So how I actually
Yeah,
got into corporate and how I got to my six figures in corporate was I actually coincidentally started out as a contractor. Like I didn't mean to. That was just the role that was presented to me. So I started out on a day rate, and it was on the lower end at this point because it was an entry level role. So it was a compliance analyst, but specifically within financial crime. So financial crime compliance.
define lower end as well, just to give an indication of what you can expect when you first join on an entry level contracting role.
From what I remember, I think it was like 100 and something a day, like 100 and
Okay.
yeah, 100 and something a day, like less than 150.
Let's just say 150. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
or
then cool, cool,
thereabouts. It
cool.
was just a bit lower. It was a while ago. But yeah, so I started out on that, and then I was on that contract for about 6 months. And then they changed me to become a permanent staff. So they essentially brought in a lot of contractors. Well, not a lot, but they brought in a few contractors, and then they essentially assessed like our capabilities. Like, can you do the job? Do you know what you're doing? And then I became permanent shortly after that, right? So, and that's when I went on the 28K, and then that increased to 30K after like a couple of months as well. So it was like 28, 30K. So I hope that makes sense. Started out as a contractor. I was there for 6 months. They liked my work or thought I could, I was good enough. And then I became permanent and then moved on to the 28, 30K. So that's how I started out in compliance, right? And then after that role, I actually went to a permanent role. So that's where I moved to a much more senior role. And I've spoken about this on my TikTok as well. I moved to a much more senior role in the capacity, like because it was a startup company, I was able to take on a very, very senior role and essentially be able to do it because it wasn't like a huge team. Like it wasn't a huge corporate. So it was a startup company. So I was able to do more. So I was permanent there for a couple of years. And then I moved back into, so that was the startup company. And then I moved back into contracting, and I was contracted for KPMG within the compliance function. So at that point, my contract, my day rate had gone up significantly from the 100 and whatever I was earning when I first started out, because I was more experienced and I was able to, hit the ground running. For the very first role, they didn't expect me to come and hit the ground running straight away. But for the second role, for the second contract role, I was able to come and hit the ground running. So you will typically get paid a lot more for those kind of roles, right? And those roles will range from anywhere between like maybe 300 a day to 400, 500 a day. That's what you're looking at for those kind of roles, right? And actually on that contract, it just kept getting extended. So this is another thing about contracting. There are different types of contract roles. The very first one, it was a 6-month contract and I moved to become permanent. But the second contract I did, it was a project. So they hired some contractors to come into this project. and the project just kept going on and on. I'm pretty sure the project is still going on right now, but I just left because yeah, I've had
No
enough.
way.
Say that again, Stephen.
I said no way that the project is still going on.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm pretty sure it's still going on. So there are different types of contracts, right? So yeah, it's just going on. And actually on that contract, they kept, so every 6 months they'll renew my contract and my day rate would go up. So yeah, it was quite a good contract to be on, to be fair. And then I was approached by my current role, which is the Fintech. And again, I was approached as a contractor, and again, my day rate went up again. So my day rate just kind of kept going up, and which is where I hit the 6-figure mark. When it comes to hitting 6 figures as a contractor, typically you're looking at from like 400 upwards, 400 a day, 500 a day upwards. And if you can get that, then you can essentially, you're earning 6 figures. Like the amount of money that's coming into your account is like what a 6-figure earner would earn. And especially if your contract keeps getting extended, then you're essentially earning 6 figures. Right. So that is essentially my journey into the 6 figures in contracting. And yeah, like I said, I've done both. I've seen a couple of questions about IR35. I'll touch up on that a little bit later as well. But yeah, I've had roles inside of IR35 and I've had roles outside of IR35 as well. And I'll
got
explain
you. A few questions. No, got you, got you. A few questions have kind of come in as well beyond that IR35 stuff, which I think we can cover. So I guess you started out by going into an entry level role in contracting. And again, some would think that you need experience to go into contracting, right? How did you navigate getting into compliance with little to no experience coming out of university?
Yeah. So in terms of getting into compliance, it was what's it called? It was my transferable skills and how I was able to present my CV and highlight the skills. So literally what I did, I found the job description online and I tailored, you hear this all the time, you have to tailor the job description to your CV. Well, you have to tailor the CV to your job description. So it was a matter of me looking for those keywords on the role that I was going for, like on the job description for the role, and then making sure that translates on my CV. Essentially, it was that simple. And then having a mentor as well. So I didn't have a mentor in the formal sense of a mentor, but I had somebody. I knew somebody that worked in the industry. And guys, this is so valuable. Like if you know somebody, maybe personally reaching out to someone on LinkedIn that's in the industry that you want to work in, that's going to help out a lot in terms of fast tracking your access to that industry, because they know it. They know what you have to say in interviews. They know everything. So it's going to help you out a lot. So that's essentially what helped me get into that role. And in terms of it being a contract role, there wasn't anything that special about it being a contract role. It was just another job. So I didn't have to tailor my CV in a different way or anything like that. It was just a job. It just happened to.
It's just that you're coming in just as a contractor. Yeah. Got you. And then I guess in that same breath, then what does the application process look like when you're going for a contractor role? Does it differ? Is there a lot more competition because they're looking through other contractors as well? Like, how do you navigate that process? And I guess a question to throw in that as well is that do you feel compelled to kind of like alter your day rate because of, you potentially want to be a lot more attractive in comparison to other contractors? How does it work?
Okay, so answering that last question, no. Like I haven't found it to be super competitive in terms of getting into contracting. Maybe it's because of my industry, but I haven't found it to be super hard or super competitive. But the notable difference, though, in terms of securing a contract role compared to securing a permanent role, is the fact that actually it's a little bit easier to get contract roles in terms of the interview process, because the interview process isn't usually as stringent as when you're applying to get a permanent role, just because they are hiring you as basically a temporary staff. And actually, one thing about being a contractor, if they hire you as an experienced hire, you come in and you're not doing the job and you're just completely rubbish and you actually don't know what you're doing, they will get rid of you. Because that's why they've hired, okay, maybe not that quick and easy. I made it sound really crazy, but they hired you as somebody that should know what you're doing. Except obviously in like more entry level roles, that's not the case with those kind of roles. They know they're hiring you minimal experience. But if you're somebody that's, claims to be in the industry for like 5 years and they're hiring you to come and hit the ground running, and you come in and you can't necessarily hit the ground running, they'll give you a few chances, but ultimately they're not there to like teach you and hold your hand, because they are hiring you and paying you a premium to be the expert. So you have to know what you're doing, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So in terms of getting in to contract roles, I found it a lot more straightforward. And actually, compared to getting permanent roles, they're not too fussed about like, oh, your personality and stuff like that. It's very much like, can you do the job? Right. My
Because
experience.
again, that's why we're paying a premium. Like, can you do the job? Yes or no? Let's see if you can do it. And I guess because like there's limited, and you're probably gonna touch on this, but I guess with contracting, there's limited protection for employees essentially in terms of like being kept on in the company. So if you're not doing it well, as you said, they can just like on to the next guy, right?
Yeah. Like I haven't experienced that. And to be honest, I've gone on to contract roles where I wasn't 100% confident in what I was doing. But you just, you learn. Make sure you're learning fast. Because I haven't seen that there hasn't been a lot of instances where they've just got rid of people. But it does happen. So you do need to make sure you're clued up to what you're doing. So I didn't mean to scare anyone by saying that, but just make sure you know what you're doing, essentially. Just make sure you know what you're doing.
Got you.
So
There's still
yeah.
a few more questions, but maybe if we progress through the next slides and then I'll kind of throw them in there as I see fit.
Okay. So since we're talking about contracting, I like to present a balanced view of things. So in terms of pros, for me, there's personally more pros, as in more positive aspects of contracting compared to the bad side. I'm just going to run through the bullet points really quickly. So in terms of the biggest pro is obviously that you're making significantly more money. So if I was, just to give you an example, right? Like my take home pay as a contractor is typically more than double of what I would take home if I compared to a permanent staff, right? So it literally is significantly more money in your pocket at the end of the month, right? So that is one good thing about contracting, which is why most people do become contractors, because you're taking on so much money and you can save more. And for me, that's really important because of my, property thing that I try to do outside of work. So for me, that works. And then if your contract is outside of IR35, which is basically a legislation, it's basically the law that dictates how you get paid as a contractor. So if it's within that law, then you're basically treated like a normal employee, like everyone else. So you get taxed like everyone else, the 20%, the 40%, all the thresholds and things like that. But if you're outside of that law, then you're basically a small business. You have a limited company, you're paid through a limited company, and then you have to do your own taxes. I had an accountant when I was outside of IR35, and that way, a lot of people, you can expense a lot of things. This is not financial advice, but you can expense a lot of things, which means that you typically get to take home a lot more money, like significantly more money than you would if you were inside that law. I hope that makes sense to people. But yeah, so it's a lot more tax efficient. Yeah, so it's a lot more tax efficient, like I said. And then it's flexible as well. So some contracts, 6 months, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, it's flexible. So if you wanted to kind of take a break between contracts, you can do that. So a lot of people like that flexibility that comes with being a contractor. And then what is it called? Job hunting often. Oh, that looks like a mistake, to be fair. Job hunting often. I think that's meant to be a con. Yeah, that's meant to be a con. Okay, I'm going to go to the last couple of bullet points on the pro side of things. So yeah, contracting can be a great segue into top companies as well. So a lot of big companies do hire contractors, and then say at the end of your contract, if they like you or if they think that, okay, you've done well, they might keep you on as a permanent staff, and then you can get into that big company. And where I said it's quite contracted, like the interview process for contracting is quite easy. So it can be an easy way to just get into those roles that maybe you wouldn't normally, if you had to go through the stringent interview process that a lot of permanent roles have. And then oh wow, lots of spelling errors in this. The very last bullet point. The very last bullet point is that you can build a large network of professionals. So when you're contracting, you meet a lot of other people that are contracting, and you just meet a lot of people, and you can really build a good, solid network of people that present opportunities. Like one of my KPMG contracts, I got because an ex-colleague told me about the contract and I applied, and then she kind of referred me. So just having that
Mm,
network of people can be really useful. So that's one of the great things about being a contractor. So in terms of the bad side, the cons, in terms of getting a mortgage, most lenders actually can be quite skeptical about contractors, especially if you're new in the contracting game, because they basically view you as a business. They basically view you as a business, and they like for a business to have a long track record of essentially making money. So if you're new into it, they see you as a person that you don't really have a track record, right? So they are quite skeptical about that. However, I did it, so I did get a mortgage as a new contractor, and it was fine. So it's just a little bit. It's because like most lenders are skeptical, but not all of them. They are. You do get like some specialist lenders that are fine with that. But just something to think about. Stability is not guaranteed. So I think this is the main thing for people when it comes to contracting that puts people off. And I don't blame them. It just really depends on your circumstance. Stability is not guaranteed. So say you've been taken on a 6-month contract and it's not guaranteed that your contract is going to be extended. People don't like that. It's like, oh, okay, I'd rather be in a permanent job, to be honest, getting that steady income. But for some people, like maybe myself, if I've made the amount of money I would have made in a year in 6 months, I'm cool with that. And I can always, start looking early, start looking for a new contract. And in most cases, my contracts have been extended. So that isn't something that I've struggled with, but I understand why some people wouldn't like that. And then finally, I think I've touched upon this earlier, some contractors might be more disposable than a permanent employee. Like if you're a permanent employee and maybe you're not performing well, there's more of a process to kind of getting rid of you. But with a contractor, yes, there's a process, but it's a lot more like it's not as stringent. So they can get rid of a bit more, like a bit easier. So that's the pros and cons of contracting. Yeah.
Got you. A few questions that have kind of come through. A lot of people are asking about what agencies would you recommend for contracting roles? What are your go-tos?
Agencies. Okay. I've worked with quite a few
Or is it
agencies.
or is it like a apply directly kind of thing?
Is it a what, sorry?
Or is it like an apply directly kind of thing? Like what agencies are about, or do you have to apply directly? How does it work?
Both. The contract I got with my current role, I was actually contacted. So I put my CV on eFinancial Careers at the time, and then they just found my CV on there, called me, interview process, couple stages, and I got the role. In the past, I've worked with an agency called Alexander Mann. So Alexander Mann Solutions, I've worked with them. Yeah, and there's a couple of, so there's lots of them do it. I'm trying to think.
I'm sure we can pick your brain after when we send like a follow-up email. We'll send it to everyone. That's fine.
Yeah, and I even have a newsletter as well that people can sign up to, and I will
Yes, we can
share that.
plug that as well.
I'll talk about the newsletter at the end, but people can sign up to the newsletter because I was talking about all this stuff on there. But yeah, that's for the end anyway.
Got you. Another one that's actually quite niche, and I feel like we can both answer. What advice would you give to social media creators that want to be open and transparent about their corporate life journey? Does it implicate job offers? Does it get brought up at work? That's a very, very saucy one.
Very saucy, very, very saucy, and very relevant to us, Stephen. Yeah.
Mhm.
But
So
do you want to
how
answer?
would you answer that?
Oh, do you want to answer it now? Okay.
Yeah, you go first.
It just depends on the company. It depends on the policy. You have to look at the policy of the company you're working with. Companies have social media policies, so just make sure you have a look to make sure they're happy with that. Like for me, I've read my social media policy, which is why I'm not mentioning the name of my company on this call, right? So you just make sure that you're clued up as to what they expect from you and look at your contract as well. Some companies are more lenient about it. Like the whole fintech. I've noticed that the fintech kind of techie companies a lot of the time are more lenient towards it, but the more traditional industries like maybe law and accounting and maybe asset management potentially, I'm not sure, but they are a bit more, they don't want it. So you have to look at your contract and your policy. But Stephen, you seem like you have a lot to say about that.
Yeah. I think me, like, I have quite radical views when it comes to doing
Not
social
radical.
media and working. No, it is a bit radical. I mean, because some would say that what I would advise some companies would frown against it kind of thing. But me personally, I'm just not a fan of like censorship culture in corporate. I just think like corporate tries to censor like a lot of people so much and control them when like, it's your life at the end of the day. So my mantra is it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. That's the way I've operated whenever I've worked in corporate kind of thing. Obviously, you wanna act with a lot of sense, right? You don't want to just be sharing like confidential information or like sharing sensitive information and sensitive data, right? And doing like stupid stuff at work. Do you know what I mean? But in terms of like, I know like for example, when I used to work in private equity, they don't even like you doing a day in the life if you're working from home. To me, that's nonsense. Like, like I'm in the comfort of my own home. I'm doing the work kind of thing. I'm providing insight. I'm not providing any confidential data and so on and so forth. So to me, I don't want to be in an environment like that that's really restrictive to something that I enjoy outside of work. And then alternatively, I've been at firms where like they love when I do that social media stuff and they want to be involved in it and they want to be associated with it. And me personally, because of social media was quite a big part of like my life, I wanted to be in an environment that would like accommodate for that. So I was willing to leave jobs if they were like, we don't like the social media thing you're doing. Whereas I've had a lot of friends where like their firms have told them you can't do social media and they're like, yep, fine, I won't do social media. And me personally, I just don't subscribe to that because I just feel like you shouldn't be censored from doing what you like when we spend about 80% of our lives at work. You're not about to take the 20% that I have to myself. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of like my view on it. Again, like each to their own, right? I think it's just ultimately about what you value more. Obviously, if you value your career more and you value that role that you're in kind of thing, then obviously you would pick that, right? But if you value like your freedom and you want to do stuff outside of work that you enjoy, then I think it's just about finding an environment that allows you to do that freely. So that's ultimately what I think. But I'm not saying people should go and get in trouble in work because of social media. That's not what I'm saying. Like just find somewhere that like, accommodates for like what you want and just ultimately identify like the priority that you want in your life, right? But yeah.
Makes sense.
I hope that kind of covers that. We can move on to the next slide and again we'll kind of cover questions towards the end as well.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, so now back to you guys about how you can make six figures in corporate. How can you make six figures in corporate, right? So my advice would be start by looking at your field, right? Within your field, can you even become a contractor within your field? Or what are, and even outside of contracting, because you don't have to become a contractor to make six figures, right? What are the different options in terms of what are the people in with experience within your field making? What are they, what kind of money are they making? You need to understand your own field before you start looking outside, in my opinion. To understand the salary prospect, you can do that by going online, Google it, go onto job boards, look at what people are earning in your field, in what you want to go into, and look, does this align with me? Because I know some people are happy with doing jobs where the salary sort of the ceiling in terms of salary isn't that high, but I'm not. Like, I value my time. So for me, when I'm doing a job, like, I want to know that, okay, me spending my time in this industry is going to pay dividends, if not now, in the future, right? So know your industry. Second point, look for specific job description and highlight the skills. I think people sleep on this quite a bit, like the power of actually just going on Google. I mentioned Google a lot, but Google is free and it's useful and it's got so much information that will help you. Right, go on Google, search up the jobs that you want. So search up these jobs, these senior roles. What are the roles that you know are going to pay you what you want? Look, get a copy of the job description. You don't have to print it out or anything, but get a copy and highlight the skills. What skills are they looking for in those roles? Highlight those skills and then just work towards gaining the skills one by one. Gain those skills, because that is why you're going to get paid the amount that you want to get paid. It's for the certain skills. Like for me personally, I got paid, like I'm getting paid what I'm getting paid right now because of my skills that I've got within compliance and also my experience, right? So understand what it takes to get to where you want to get to within your own industry and maybe even your dream industry, whatever industry you want to pivot into, right? So it's all about the skills. You get paid for your skills ultimately. And then I think you have to be, I would advise to be strategic also about gaining the right skills as well. So if like I said earlier on, if you're on a salary right now, maybe it's not what you want to be on and you're aspiring for the six figures, what skills can you actually gain from your current role? Because those are the skills that will get you to where you want to get to. I know somebody that was on maybe like 30K, like 27K for a while in their role. And he was just there on 27K for a while. But then he was happy to take that role because the skills he was gaining some high level skills, and he knew that once I leave this place, I'm going to be making bag. And now he's tripled his salary in like within the space of a year because he gained the right skills. He
Wow.
don't just sit in your 27K role. I'm not saying 27K is bad or whatever, but it's just an example. Don't sit in your 27K role dreaming about 100K when actually some of the skills you need to get that 100K is in your 27K role. So look around you. What skills can I absorb from this role? Take everything you can from that role, because that's what's going to get you to where you want to get to, and sooner than you think too. It doesn't have to be quick, but it will get you there eventually. So just focus on gaining those skills, absorb the skills. And even if you can't gain this, and if you're in a company where maybe you can't gain any more skills, then maybe you're in the wrong company. So maybe move horizontally. It doesn't have to be, oh, money, money, money. Sometimes move to a similar role in a company that will accelerate your growth, right? And then make the moves for the money. So it's just about gaining those skills. Honestly, I can't stress that enough, and you can be strategic about it. Yeah, so don't, in my opinion, don't say no to a role that's paying you less because you're like, oh, but I want to be making 100K, when actually that role is going to give you the skills. Like those skills are so important, especially when you're young. Like where I'm in my 20s, a lot of people are in their 20s, but yeah, so just gain the skills. And sometimes it's down to experience. Yeah, sometimes it's down to like how long have you been in the industry? Sometimes that's how you can earn 6 figures in certain industries. Some industries you actually physically cannot earn 6 figures unless you've maybe been there for like 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years. Some industries you can do it sooner. So just understand that, okay, in my field, is it going to take like experience or is it the skills? So know your industry. In my industry, it's not necessarily down to experience. It's down to skill. Like what can you do? Like are you a specialist in what you're doing? Then you get you can get those high day rates and those high salaries.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my take on it.
And I also think like yeah, like you said, I think skills is really important, but ultimately I think it just comes down to like the demand for the industry that you're working in. So with something like compliance, almost the whole world is pretty much regulated, right? So there's always compliance in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Governments are always implementing all these new regulations that's just not really understandable. And companies are looking for people to be able to understand this, but then also implement it into their organization. That's a very in-demand industry, an in-demand role that's not going to die. So I think
Yeah.
ultimately it's about finding, okay, cool, number one, what is an in-demand industry? What is an industry that I can go into that I'm always going to be needed and I'm always going to be an asset? And then number two, as you said, making sure that you can fill that skills gap essentially, and then you would always be good, right? So I think in-demand industries is something that now that you're saying it, a lot of people don't really stress it enough, but it's really important because I think ever so often a lot of us want to go into these like roles that sound sexy, like, oh, I want
Yeah.
to be a banker, or I want to work in finance. And that's just because of that's what sounds sexy and that's what everybody
Yeah.
sees on TV to be like really attractive, right? And we think we make a lot of money from those industries. As you've rightly pointed out, it's only when you're working in that industry for a certain amount of time you make that money. Whereas in-demand jobs and in-demand skills that you can just kind of, as long as you go in there, as long as you're good
Straight
at the job
away.
kind of thing, you can make money. That's not talked about enough. And I know that in this generation, we all love fast money. This is the way to essentially make fast money. Have the
Yeah.
skills, make the money. You know what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say? And as you
Yeah.
said, like, you're in your mid 20s and you're making 6 figures kind of thing. So I think a lot of people don't really stress this enough kind of thing. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
good that you kind of pointed that out.
Yeah. And also,
A few
uh,
interesting.
let
So
me
go on.
say this
Go on.
well, Stephen. I just really want to say this. If your company offers like qualifications or things that you can do, right, to maybe add to your CV that will give you more credibility, do that. Like every company you go to, take as much out of that company as you can, right? Because at the end of the day, we're numbers to these companies, right? So you need to, and they're taking out of you, they're taking your skills, your time, your knowledge. Take what you can out of that company, take the qualification, take the skills, like whatever it is they're offering you, take it and use it to build yourself so you can become that person that, you can make your way to the money, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, no, no. Honestly, that point resonates with me so much because I posted about this on LinkedIn this week. There's been a lot of layoffs at the moment, and I was saying to people that this layoffs is a prime example that being loyal to a company is just bullshit. Like you need to be selfish when you're going into these companies. Ask for the biggest pay rises, get the biggest promotions, do the professional development. Everything should be stacked in your favor because ultimately, when these companies are laying people off, they're doing what's in their best interest. This is to keep their business running. Do you know what I mean? It's not personal. It's just like respectfully, we're all numbers on a balance sheet. If the numbers aren't adding up, the business is not going to keep you. So with that being said, it's important to just always have that in mind when you're going to these jobs. You are a number. Make sure you
Mm.
make the most of it. So yeah, I couldn't echo that sentiment enough, to be honest. That is really important. And I think again, like uni is just so rubbish because they don't tell you these things. Uni just tells you, oh yeah, you're qualified, get a job and love it forever. But it's like, no, that's bullshit. Like this thing is all a game, and you just have to play the game very, very well. So yeah, so I'm getting really passionate about that because it just really annoys me,
It's
like when
true.
people treat
It's
work
true.
as like a
I
be all
agree.
and end all. A few intricate questions that have kind of come through, conscious of time. How does contracting work in terms of pensions and workplace benefits? Whilst you're at a particular company, are you entitled to all of this as a contractor? That's a really interesting one.
Really good question. Really good question. And the answer is that it depends on the contract. So there are different types of contracts. I've been on certain contracts where nothing. You just literally get your day rate and that's it. You're on your way. No company benefits. You don't even get a sick day. So the for days that you don't work, you don't get paid. So if you record and sick that day, you don't get paid. Like I've been on certain contracts that are like that. But I've been on other contracts where you get a sick day, you get sick pay, you get some benefits here and there through like your agency that is paying you or some sort of like here and there, right? But a lot of the time
Mhm.
you won't get the company benefits, like you won't get the private health insurance, all that kind of stuff. But again, it depends on the contract. So if you're looking to go for a contract role, you have to look into that specific contract. If that's something that you care about, like getting those benefits, then just make sure you ask about that specific contract that you're looking to go for. But it's quite common, right? To answer the question, it's quite common within contracting not to get those benefits. But the
Got you. That
money
makes
that
sense.
you get, the cash that you get more than makes up for it, basically.
Yeah, we'll cover for it ultimately. Got you. Let's move on to the next slide and then we can kind of cover questions for the next like 5 minutes or so.
So yeah, I think yeah, that's the end of what I was going to say. But guys, I'm going to be talking about a lot more of this stuff. Like people ask about salary negotiations, CVs, just industry news, industry information. I'm going to cover all of that in my newsletter. So you can go on that website. You can download a free copy of my CV, right, that I use to secure these kind of roles. And then you'll sign up to my newsletter as well. So I'm going to be sharing all those things monthly. So it's not going to be every day. It's going to be a monthly newsletter with lots of information that will follow up from basically what we've spoken about on this call. So feel free to download the newsletter and the CV and sign up to my newsletter. So that's what this page is for, basically.
Perfect. Yeah. We'll be sure to share that as well. We have like a weekly newsletter, so like we'll be sure to share all these details. Also, when the video of the webinar comes out, presentation, you guys will have access to that and all the relevant links and socials to Kenny as well. She posts like a lot of good content. She's my fellow content creator, and yeah, she's always posting a lot of good career content as well. So honestly, I feel like that alone should be able to help you guys kind of navigate the industry and stuff like that, and also get insight into like property as well, which is something that I saw that you've been talking about a lot more as well. And I know a lot of people are aspiring like property owners and stuff like that. So that's definitely a good part. The link isn't working. Again, we'll be sure to share it like in the email and stuff like that. So you should be able to get access
Probably
to it.
because I spelled it wrong. That's so silly. So it's Kenny with an IE, not with a
You
Y.
know what's so funny? So when I saw that, yeah, I was like, oh, surely like the domain must have been taken because I was thinking you told me your name isn't spelled like that, but don't worry, I'll type it in again. Again,
Yeah,
I'll
that's the
share
one.
it with you guys. I'll share it.
That's the one.
But
That's the
a
one.
few final
So
questions as well, just for us to wrap up. So, Kenny, one of the things that you covered was, outside IR35 and inside IR35, right? So, I'm guessing if it's outside IR35, you have to kind of set up like a limited company and all that kind of
yeah,
stuff. How
yeah.
difficult is it to do that? Like, what are the resources to navigate doing that? And I guess like another question is always, is it harder to find outside of IR35 roles at the moment? Like, how do you kind of navigate that?
Okay, so there's three questions there, and I'm going to answer them very briefly and concisely.
Mhm.
First question, what was the first question? So the first question
But
was,
first question is, in terms of like, navigating roles outside of IR35 and inside IR35, like how do you go about finding that? And how easy is it for you to set up like a limited company and stuff like that for the IR35 roles?
setting up a limited company, easy peasy, go on company's house, takes minutes, pay a tenner, easy. Nothing complicated about it.
Hmm.
But sometimes some people hire accountants to do it, but it's nothing extensive. Like it's super easy
Or
to
you
do.
can, or you can use something called a formation company as well. It's like really, really straightforward. You pay them and they'll literally do everything for you. So that's like quite
Yeah,
straightforward.
just go on. Yeah, just go online, Google it. easy. And in terms of finding outside of IR35 contracts, they are more rare. They are definitely more rare to get. So outside because of the legislation, there's been a lot of law changes around it. They are more rare, but they do exist, especially in tech, from what I've observed. They are rare, but they do exist, and they are very lucrative. And then I think you had the final question.
And someone just asked what is IR35, so if you can just briefly explain that as well, because a lot of people are kind of confused about that.
Yeah, so IR35 is a law that the government has put in place for employers, right, and how to categorize their contractors, right? So if you're hiring somebody, so you can either be inside of IR35 or you can be outside of IR35, right? So I see it as a wall. Like I see IR35 as just wall. It's like, okay, you're either inside or you're outside. And if you're inside the wall, you basically get treated like you get paid, right? So you still get a day rate on both, but when you're inside IR35, so when it applies to you, you get paid like a normal employee, like how everyone else gets paid, right? You're 20%, you're 40% band, you get paid like how everybody on a normal salary employee gets paid. But if you're outside of IR35, it means it doesn't apply to you. So this law doesn't apply to you if you're outside of it. So therefore you get paid like a business. So you set up a limited company and you get paid through your limited company, and then you have to do your tax returns. I hired an accountant, I think it was like £400 I paid him for the year. So it was inexpensive to do. And he just sorted out my accounts for me. And the tax I paid that year, I paid, because corporation tax is like 20%, and it's not a lot compared to what you'd be paying if you're earning the same amount inside IR35 or if you're a permanent employee. So yeah, I hope that explains it. So you're either inside or outside. Outside is where a lot of people want to be, because you get to pay taxes like a business and you can keep more of your money, you can expense things, and that's better.
Got you. No, that makes absolute sense. Honestly,
not professional tax advice.
Yeah, that's not professional financial advice. We don't want to get in trouble. There's still a few questions as well, but we can kind of like cover them. I'll be sure to send emails as well. These are general questions that we can very much answer and stuff like that. But honestly, Kenny, thank you so much for spending an hour with us and just delving into like, your industry, how to make six figures. Honestly, I know, like, let's just look beyond this trivial title. Money is very, very important when working, guys.
Yeah.
It is the number one thing. The way I see it, you should be earning, learning, and then repeating the cycle. That's what it's about, right?
Yeah.
If you earn more, like you're in a good position, learn more, you can earn more. And you should just be repeating that cycle. So this is very, very important. Beyond how, like, gimmicky this title is, it's important to make as much money as you can at work. And I think something that you stressed as well, Kenny, that I think is really important. Put a lot of worth in your time. Your time is very, very valuable. So you need to put a lot of worth.
The most valuable asset.
So
and if you have any, sorry, David.
No, go on, sorry.
I was just gonna say, you can feel free to DM me on and follow me on Instagram, and you can ask me questions and stuff. I'll get around to it eventually. There's quite a lot of it, but just follow me.
I feel sorry. Yeah, when your DMs get bombarded, that's your own business. But I'll be sure to share all the socials as well, guys, so you guys can kind of connect as well. But no, honestly, guys, thank you so much for turning up. I'm gonna send a feedback form if you guys can fill that out. Tell us how we can make the sessions better. And till the next one. We have a couple of webinars next month as well with some employers. So watch the space for that. There's going to be a lot of internship opportunities available as well, guys. So keep an eye out for that as well. But I'll leave you guys to it. Have a good one, guys.
You're welcome, guys. I can see your comments. It's very, very kind. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.